Welcome to new Kernel Training. In order for this training to be effective, you must have a username and password to your unit's popcorn account through Trails End. Once you have that account, you can log in using the www.trails-end.com web address. You cannot access this section via the app on any sort of mobile device, and you cannot access this using a Scout's username and password. You must have your own username and password that is associated directly with your pack. The first thing we're going to talk about is once you've logged into the web address as seen at the top of the screen, you're going to want to go down to the training section, and you'll see that there is an app quick start guide. This guide is what you would like to present to all of your scouts who are going to sell with you. You should fill out your council, district, and unit and provide this to any scouts who wish to sell popcorn this fundraising season. This is what will allow them to create their account and to fill up your unit roster. Once you have your scouts, you'll go to Unit Info, and your scouts will show up in the unit roster section here. This section merely gives you a listing of the scouts that are already signed up with your unit. Click on it and start seeing your scouts once they have started to sign up. Next, you'll go to Storefront Settings. In here, you want to identify your storefront settings. Please be aware that you want to set this and then forget it. Changing this setting mid-year or anytime during the year will recalculate all of your scouts' storefront sales for the entire season, both those that have occurred in the past and also those that will occur in the future. The first one is scouts will receive credit for each sale recorded. If you hover over the little red circle next to each one, it will explain that a little bit further. This is ideal for when you have one scout per shift. That means that if you have two scouts, if one scout does all the recording, they will get all the credit as if the other scout was not there. So this is best if you only have one scout, or if you want to make sure that they only get credit for those that they actually record. The second one is scout split between all scouts on that work shift. This will allow you to have multiple people at a storefront. In this example, if you have, let's just say 4 per shift, regardless of who takes the actual physical order, they will all share. So if you earn $1,000, the 1,000 would be divided by 4, each scout getting $250 in sales credit. Sales that are split among scouts that work that store on that day. This one indicates that you will not only share again across those scouts for the specific shift, but any of the shifts that occur on that specific day at that specific storefront. So in our pack, this is what we choose. If I have a 4-hour storefront, there's 2 shifts, which are 2 hours apiece. That means regardless of if the scout worked the first shift or the second shift, they will split the sales from both shifts among the total scouts that worked. So in this example, we use 4 scouts per shift. So if it's 2 shifts, that's 8 scouts, and we would divide whatever the total is among those 8 scouts evenly. For us, being a Cub Scout pack, this works the best for us, because then if you get on a shift that is not very good, or you get on a shift that is extremely good, it all evens out the scouts. The last one is sales will be split among scouts during the entire year. That means regardless of when you work, which shift you work, which storefront you work, it splits all of the sales among all of the scouts. Okay. Next, you'll want to set up what your default time zone is. You'll want to enter in the duration of your shifts. This is just your default, the number of scouts that you typically allow, and then what date you would like your default release date to be. Once you've identified those, you would just click on Save. You will also want to go into your unit team members, and this is where you will set up any additional people who are going to help you to run your popcorn fundraiser for the year. This would be your other committee members. The last thing that you'll want to make sure is that your bank account information has been filled out as well. It is self-explanatory, asking for your routing information, the bank account information, so on and so forth. From there, we want to go over to the option called storefront reservations. Now, if you are using a mobile device and connecting to the trails-n.com website, you may need to click on the hamburger, which is the horizontal 3 little lines, either in the upper left or upper right-hand corner of the web page, and that will display this blue bar. I am on a computer using a desktop version, so that's why the blue bar is automatically here. So I will go ahead and click on storefront reservations. Storefront reservations are going to show me a couple of different things. The first thing that you'll notice is that there's 3 options across the top: manage, reserve, and create new, as well as you have number reserved, current available, upcoming available, and next available date. I'm recording this video in the middle of the popcorn season, so you will notice that some of my information is set to, for example, infinity, but I want to talk about these options. At the beginning of the season, the number reserved would be 0, and it would show me, as I reserve storefronts, how many that I have. The current available option is going to differ, again, at the beginning of the sale. The way that my council does it is they allow us to reserve a certain number on the first day and a certain number on the second day when storefronts have opened, to make sure that all units have the ability to go in and reserve storefronts. So for example, on day 1, number reserved said 0 and current available said 2. That meant that I was able to reserve up to 2 storefronts, and once I had reserved my 2, I would be unavailable to reserve any additional ones until the following day when 2 more became available. That is when, for example, my upcoming available would then show 2, and it would show me that they're going to be available the next day. Because we are in the middle of the season, I can reserve as many storefronts as I want if there are some available. That's why it currently says infinity. Now, looking at the manage, reserve, and create new options. So we're going to start with reserve, because you need to reserve some storefronts or create storefronts before you can manage them. The way that you do this is you come in and you select the date that you want to reserve the storefront. So for example, is if I wanted to look at, for example, the 28th of October, I could click on the 28th of October. I currently am in the Silver Comet district. I could also go and select a different district, or I could select all districts, and it would show me all of the storefronts that are available in the district that I selected. Now, I can narrow down the search if I wanted to by, for example, typing in the word Lowe's, and now I will only see the Lowe's that are available in those areas. I will also notice that each of them has a start and an end time. I can then click on reserve if I would like to reserve that as a storefront. If there is a storefront that you want to reserve, you can go ahead and click the create new if Trails End has not reserved them for you. So here you're going to go ahead and you're going to select the date. So I will leave it as the 3rd. Registration begin date, this defaults from my unit info that I filled out at the beginning of this video, but I can go ahead and update that to any date that I want. So for example, I can go ahead and update that to today. I can change the time. Again, this is the default, and so is the time zone, but I can go and update that for myself. Now, when you click on organization, it's going to give you a long list of available stores. If the store that I want is not in this list, you can simply press the letter O and then continue scrolling down until you see the option that says Other. Once you've selected other, you can then enter in a location name. So for this example, I'm going to put in training video storefront so that none of my actual scouts try to go in and reserve it for themselves. Okay. I can go ahead and put in a street address. Now, the thing that's really smart about putting in a street address is that once the address has been entered, if that address is already reserved by another unit, you will get a message saying that there is an overlapping time. So you want to make sure that the address you select is the specific address where you're going to be, because not only will it block other units from reserving your time, but it will also allow you to see if someone else has already got it blocked off. I'm going to go ahead and type in 3600, and I'm going to use the automatic address location. I'll choose Dallas Highway. It automatically fills in the information for me, and then I can put my contact information in here. Okay. Any other information I want, and then click the Save button. If that storefront already existed, if someone else already had one for that address, it would come up and it would flag me and let me know that I could not reserve it. From here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some shifts. So you click the Add a Shift button. You'll notice that it automatically starts at 8 a.m. Okay, I can go ahead and update that. And it automatically puts it in 2-hour increments because that's what I told it my default was, as well as it also allows me to have a maximum of 4 scouts because, again, that is what I set my default to. For my purposes, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change this to be 6 p.m. And I'm going to go ahead and make it until 8 p.m., for example. Or if I didn't want it to be a 2-hour shift, I could do 1-hour shift, 1.5. It's completely up to you. You can override the defaults on a storefront by storefront basis. I also am only going to allow 1 scout for this particular storefront because I'm going to be using it for demonstration purposes. Once I've set up my storefront and my shifts, I'll click Save. So you'll see I now have 1 storefront set up and there is 1 scout assigned to it. If I go ahead and click the Add Shift, this will allow me to create the next shift. You'll automatically see that it has tagged on 2 additional hours, which end at the same time that, which begin at the same time that the previous one ended. Again, it's taking all of my defaults, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change it to 1 scout and I'm going to click Save. So now I have 2 shifts set up. Each has a single scout. Now, you can add scouts in one of 2 ways. You can click on the shift. You can use the arrow on the right-hand side, and then you can select your scout here, and then click on the plus button to add this scout to that specific shift. When a shift is red, that means that that shift is completely full. When the shift is white, that means that there are still spots available. I've added my test scout to both of my shifts. The scouts can also be added to the shift via the app. The scout will log into the app. They will click on Storefront, and then from there, they will select the shift that they want to add themselves to. Now that I have scouts signed up, regardless of if they signed themselves up via the app or I added them, the next thing I do is I need to prepare my storefront for the day of the event. So the first thing that I do is I come into the Manage Cache, and from the Manage Cache location, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on Cache Adjustment, and I'm going to enter in the amount that I want my storefront to start with. My storefronts, I start with $75. The thought process behind that is if I have someone come to my storefront and they buy one $25 bag of popcorn, and the person hands them a $100 bill, they could make change if necessary. It is obviously not ideal because all of my cash would be gone at that point, but I at least start them with something that they could take it if necessary. Once you've entered your $75, you'll go ahead and you'll click the Submit button, and that will then put the $75 into your starting cash amount. You must enter this before any transactions are recorded against this storefront, because this number cannot be recorded afterwards. Here is what that will look like once I've put my $75 in. You'll see starting cash $75. You can review any history by clicking on the View History button, and it will show you the date and time that your transaction was done. Having closed that window, I'm now going to click on the Inventory button, and I'm going to transfer inventory to my storefront so that my storefront has inventory to sell. So I will start off by entering in the quantity: 1 sea salt snack pack, 6 unbelievable butters, 12 s'mores, 12 salted caramels, 24 white cheddars, 9 popping corns, and 12 kettle corns. Now these items are going to come from my unit to my storefront, so I will select From Unit for each one of them. And then I'll click the Adjust Transfer. Now, when I click this button, what we're going to look for is in the upper right-hand corner to make sure that all of the little boxes that pop up are green to confirm that my transfer took place. All of them are green, that's good. And you can now see that the inventory at this particular storefront is as I selected. Okay. At this point, I go ahead and I run the reports from the specific storefront and run the sales report. This is a report that gives me a summary. It tells me the name of the storefront, it shows me my starting cash, and then it identifies all of the products and what my beginning inventory is. This allows me to give the popcorn to whomever is going to take it to the storefront, and they can review this summary sheet, verify that everything that I have counted out for them is what I'm physically giving to them, and then they go ahead and sign it, and I keep this sheet until the popcorn is returned. But this confirms that I've entered the right amount of inventory and that the storefront has received the amount of inventory. So we've got 2 people who are counting it and checking it. Like I said, I just print this off, put it on the load, and have the person who's picking up sign off on it. At this point, my storefront is going to take place and orders are going to be entered. Once all of the orders are entered, then I'm going to receive both the product back and I will also receive my cash back. So when I get my product back, as I mentioned, I would go and look at my sales summary, fill in the actual quantities, and then bring this sheet back and identify how much product has been returned. Now, if all of the items match perfectly, you can click on the Return All Inventory to Unit button. However, if they do not match, you would then enter in the quantities specifically. So you would say, 3, 1, maybe you only got 7 of these back, and then you would go ahead and choose the 2 unit option and go ahead and return each of the items specifically. Okay. In this case, all of my numbers matched, so I'm going to go ahead and just click the Return All Inventory to Unit. By doing so, that will turn all of my inventory on the site to 0, and I now can proceed to doing the rest of my reconciliation. If you have a difference between your site inventory and what was physically returned, you will need to make adjustments for that. For example, if you received back 7 and you were supposed to get 8, it sounds to me like someone forgot to record a sale. So you would then go in to the orders button here. Typically when I do it, I would put in that this is a correction. I would enter a correction. I would select the specific shift, and then I would purchase an additional one using my donation money to pay for it. Like I said, most times it's that they forgot to record a sale. If, for example, you have someone who you've got one unbelievable more than you're supposed to, and you have one less s'more, because those items are the same price, somebody probably recorded an unbelievable butter instead of a s'more or vice versa. So what you want to do there is you want to go in and look at your orders and find an order that is cash, and you would refund the cash order for the one that you are over, and then put a new order in for the one that was under. That will then correct your inventory. Be sure you do not refund a credit card order, as you cannot recoup the money. You must only do it on a cash sale. Once your inventory is done, I use a separate spreadsheet. My spreadsheet is very simple. Column A, I have the denomination. Column B is the totals of all my shifts. Column C is the number of bills of that denomination. So in this example, you can see I have 3 $20 bills, which total $60. Then I have 9 $20 bills that equal $180. I have 12 $20 bills that equal $240. The sum of 240, 180, and 60 is 480. So this is my totals you can see here. I do the same thing for change. When my shifts are over, they count up the money. They put that money into an envelope. They sign the shift and storefront that they were at. They write down the total amount of cash that they're putting into the envelope. And then I have 2 adults who have confirmed that amount sign off on the envelope. I then use this to confirm that the amount of money in the envelope matches the amount of money that they wrote on the outside. From here, I will get a grand total of the amount of cash that has been returned from the site. I then enter in my starting cash, okay, making sure that my starting cash is equal to my starting cash here. And from there, I then go and look at my cash sales before donations. So for my example here, I'm going to look at a previous storefront so that you can see what this looks like. I am looking at a storefront that I previously did, so I come and I find out what the cash sales are. Now, because I've already reconciled this one, my cash sales are going to equal, in this example, $450. Now, I know this because the current amount of cash sales, which is $611, if I were to look at my orders, my last order was for $167, and $611 minus 160, 107 is $450. So I previously had $450 in sales. I then took the amount of donations that was left and entered them in as another sale. You can do this in 2 different ways depending on your council's rules. In our council, they allow me to either enter in that sale as heroes and helpers, or I can use that sale and purchase additional popcorn from my unit. So in this case, you'll see I put in donation purchase. I then identified that I wanted to buy 8 bags of white cheddar, which came up with $160. And then I used $1.07 of my remaining donation money as Heroes and Helpers and placed that as an order. So now when I go in and look at my cash management, my total cash sales is that $611.07. Here I would go in and I would enter in that I bought 8 white cheddars and I did $1.07 in Heroes and Helpers. I would then pull that product for the white cheddars and put that aside, as our PAC will take that to the local veterans, police station, fire station, what have you, and donate that product. In addition, I also at the end just like to verify, once I have put all of the money from all 3 shifts together, I then quickly just again put in the number of bills that I received, the amount of change that I have, to make sure that the number here in K32 matches the number in B25. And that is the amount of money that I am supposed to be turning into our treasurer. I take that amount of money, put that into one of the envelopes that was returned from the shift earlier in the day, write down the amount, sign my name, date it. At that point, I go back into Trails End and I then take that amount of money plus my $75, add those 2 numbers together, and that is what I would normally see in the cash due from site. I go ahead and click on the pencil, I type in that full amount of those 2 together, and then go ahead and click the submit button. So if we look at our view history, you'll see that here was my initial $75. Here are all of the items that were sold by cash, and then at the end, my collection was the $687.07. Now, physically, I'm only going to give my treasurer the $611.07 plus the $75 is what equals the $686.07. The reason I am only going to give my treasurer $611.07 is because I take that $75 and I put it into my cash box and use it for my next storefront. So at that point, I have entered the total amount collected. I've clicked the submit button. So now my storefront is completely reconciled.